I welcome you all in this webinar called Less is More. So to talk about this webinar, as entrepreneurs, we always are short of things, but we always want to get more and more out of it, right? And even if we have those resources, how do you utilize the minimal resources and get the maximum out of it? So we have with us Mr. Manoj Agarwal, who is the co-founder of XOXODay, who would be actually having a conversation around how you can extract the most in the minimal resources. Before that, I would just like to take you through 10,000 startups, what we actually are doing. So we are actually initiative by Nasscom, and we incubate technology startups, right? Taking forward, we have around. So we have been in there around for 5 years, more than 5 years actually. Now we have 8 warehouses across India. 330 plus companies have been funded by us with a total amount of $41 million. This has actually raised, the companies have been now more than 500, and the total amount has crossed 81 million in the last year. As per the last year, we have yeah, and these are some of the most stats. To actually tell you, we have four programs called Incubate program, Virtual Incubate, NIPP, and Accelerate 10x. So those of you who are part of our program actually know these, but just to have it, just to let others know that if you want to be part of Nasscom incubation program, there are two methods. Incubate program, where you actually come and sit out of our facilities across 8 cities, and work from there. The other program is virtual incubate. You could be sitting out of anywhere, and you access to our program. So NIPP is again India's largest industry-backed corporate innovation program. So we have 25 corporate partners who are actually willing to work with all of the are willing to work with startups, and we actually facilitate curated programs, for curated meetings actually with the startups and the top executives of these corporates. Right. So this was about Nasscom 10,000 startups. Right. Now we'll move over to the webinar. Right. And I'll hand over the mic to Manoj. Manoj, I guess we have all been, at some point of the time, we have all actually, faced this problem of having less resources. I guess your experience and your knowledge would be really helpful in today's webinar.
Yeah,
Over to you, Manoj.
thank you, Gaurav, and welcome everyone to this webinar. I hope everyone can hear me. Okay, so I'll take you through my own journey of this entire concept of less is more. This is something which I have learned during my experience as an entrepreneur for the last 6 to 7 years. And for an entrepreneur, there is a learning every day, and I have just kind of combined these learnings and found that this is something which I can share with my fellows and my colleagues, fellow entrepreneurs who might be taking some benefit out of my learnings during this journey. So when I talk about this concept of less is more, or you can also say it like more in less. It's about the philosophy that how can we really do a lot of things with minimalistic approach. Now there is one side of it which is more towards your personal life, where you can use the concepts of less is more. It has some connotation with spirituality, with how you live yourself in your personal lives, by consuming less things and still being very happy. And an equally important aspect of this concept is applicable in our professional life, where on every day to day work, we can apply each and every concept of minimalism in everything we do. So I will limit my discussion today more towards the professional side of less is more. But while I take you through this entire concept of less is more, uh, and then when you go back home and think through, you can apply a lot of these concepts in your personal lives as well. So I will take you through a slide deck of around 20-30 slides, and each slide has a very thoughtful concept, and those concepts will be very relevant for you in terms of your work life. And we'll be happy to answer any kind of questions once we are in the last 10 to 15 minutes. Yeah, so this is the first slide, and this is a very famous advertisement from Volkswagen. Now, typically, you find that advertisements are very cluttered, and you will find too many things the advertiser is trying to speak in the same paper, or whether it is a print ad, digital ad, or a TV ad. Now, Volkswagen did this ad a few years back, and they just did a very small car in the entire Economic Times or Times of India page, and that really was the talk of the day, because everyone was recalling that ad just because of that small change, that instead of talking a lot, this ad was just talking too less, and it was just a small car in the corner, which really helped people recall the brand Volkswagen for a long time. Now, the second concept is around the scarcity of resources. So, as entrepreneurs and also in our day-to-day life, we don't have a lot for everything. We generally have constraints, but people should always welcome constraints, because that is the time you really innovate. So, the more constraints you have, you try to stretch your boundaries, and then you try to innovate. And this applies a lot for companies who are bootstrapped, companies who don't take too much of funding, because when you have too much of money, you tend to solve the easy way, you take the easy routes. Whereas when you have less resources, you try to solve through some innovation, you try to hustle, and that is where the beauty of doing things with less resources lies. Now, going to this famous quote from Jeff Bezos, that if you can't feed a team with two pizzas, then it is too large. So, when you are working on projects, a lot of times we see scope creep in the projects. So, the time is always less when you are doing any kind of technology sprint rollout or any other kind of product. And most of the times, you tend to add more people to meet the timelines. Now, instead of doing that, try to keep the same team size but break down the problem. So, what I'm trying to say is that rather than adding more people to meet the timelines, break down the problem and break down the number of people into different problems. And then you will see that you are able to meet the timelines in the same set of people. So break down the problem as much as possible. Don't keep too large team sizes. Now this is another area that when we are doing our company, or when we are doing any product, or when we are doing any kind of feature marketing, anything, we sometimes tend to do too much, which might be unnecessary at that point of time. Now, instead of doing a lot, can you just focus on few things which are very, very essential, and then just delay the rest for the future? So just pick and choose a few most important things, whether it is product marketing, finance, HR, anything, and do that very well before moving to any other thing. And then you will find that you will have a good quality in whatever you do. Then the next is talking about clarity of thoughts. That and then this is something we ourselves face in our company a lot, that we hire a person and then we give them 20 KRAs at the same time, or we hire a person, or we give him 10 things to do at the same time, and all the ten things are different from each other. So and that is very tough to achieve, because as humans we are not made to do a lot of multitasking. We generally do well when there are few tasks. So try to have fewer goals, try to keep more focus, uh, and then achieve one goal at a time. So instead of having too many open items, just finish one or two and then move to the next. That way you will have more peace of mind, you will have more focus, and you will have more engaged employees as well, because if the employees are given too many things at the same time, they get stressed out. Now, if you see this slide, there is a meaning behind the left side of the data. So I mentioned 28,000 hours. Now, these 28,000 hours are the number of hours put by the team in XOXODay every month. So it is like a multiplication of the number of employees multiplied by 8 hours every day, multiplied by the number of working days in a month. And despite so many hours, we are still not as great as a company like Instagram, which was acquired by Facebook a couple of years back. Instagram at the time of acquisition just had some 15 to 20 employees, and the number of man hours they had every month was just 8,000. So more number of man hours don't mean that you have great work. It is the more number of focused hours which really matter. So try to focus and bring focus in your work, rather than having too many people, uh, and then there is no guarantee that too many people will also do well. uh, and this is a problem in the new age, because of the proliferation of a lot of digital assets. We are always in a tendency of keeping ourselves on all the time. So we are on a constant race of checking our social media, and then once we are done with our social media, we go back to emails. Once we are done with the email, we go back to our WhatsApp, and then that process is like continuous. So most of the times we are having 1 hour of distraction and then 10 minutes of focus time. Rather, it should be reversed. It should be like 1 hour of focus time and maybe 10 minutes of distraction. So this is something which everyone should consciously check, that how focused are you when you are working on something. You should not be kind of doing your mobile check when you are doing some deep work. You should not be going to some meetings unnecessary when you are doing some deep work. Another point I wanted to talk about is a lot of noise in the workplaces, which reduces efficiency, especially in the modern workplaces where we have the tendency that the office space should be open, everyone should be able to talk to each other. But as a person really don't really need collaboration and talking to each other so very frequently. I mean, most of the times you don't need to talk to each other or see each other so very often. I mean, uh, the talking thing to each other should be more permission based, rather than somebody just walks down and then starts talking to you, because then you are distracted. So try to have some less noise at work. Try to have some area in your office where you can really work on something which you want to work dedicatedly. Because if you are surrounded by hundreds of people, your output in the work will not that good as it can be when you are working alone. This is a very big issue in any kind of company, and companies as small as ours have been suffering from this. So till till mid of last year, we used to do a lot of meetings in our office. uh, I mean, just for the sake of FYI, or just for the sake of involving everyone, We used to kind of invite maybe 10 people where maybe just 5 people were required. So one should note that whenever you are doing any kind of meetings, you are wasting the number of hours of all the people together. So if it is a 1 hour meeting with 5 people, it is a wastage of five man hours. It is not 1 hour. So try to do as less meetings as possible. If anything is possible without meetings, try to do that. Don't try to kind of invite each and everyone in the meetings. Just keep the meetings focused to people who are really needed in that meeting. This is another example on the meetings, that can you avoid some meetings which can be easily handled through an email or through a chat or through a call. So because that way you will substantially reduce your number of hours in meetings. Meetings are generally important when there is some kind of a conflict or some kind of a negotiation required. That is an area where meetings really play a big role. But for just some status update or some FYI kind of stuff, I don't think meetings is a great way of doing things. This is a famous diagram from the book Deep Work from Carl Newport, where he talks about that how can you reduce your uh, distracted time and how can you increase your focus time, and then you will see a great output in your work. In fact, I have seen a lot of result myself, where I generally take a couple of hours or maybe couple of days break while at work. So for example, if today I'm working from home, not because I want to take a break, but it gives me very focused time. So I'm able to dedicate very fantastic 8 hours just for the work I want to do. Now, if I'm doing the same thing from office, my productivity will reduce by maybe 50% or maybe even 25%. So it's important that you take some breaks to get focus on work. Now, this is another area where the less is more works very well. That though we are startups and we tend to have less hierarchy, but I mean, still we suffer from this hierarchical problem that we keep creating new job roles which are not really required. So try to keep it flat, because less hierarchy means more alignment. You don't have to, you will reduce Chinese whispers, you will reduce people who will kind of pull back your work. So reduce hierarchy as much as possible. Now, as startups, the biggest weapon for any startup is around agility and change. And many times, we as a company, we are asked by our employees that sometimes when we change or when we do any kind of a pivot in any department, people start asking that why do we change so often? And my answer is that I think that is the biggest weapon for any startup, because elephants can't dance. Larger companies like the Infosys or the SAPs or the Googles of the world, they can't change so fast, because there's so much of hierarchy that for a change to happen, it takes months and years. Whereas a startup with less hierarchy and more agility, they can take decisions very fast and can stay very flexible. So don't lose that weapon of flexibility and change, because that is where that is actually your biggest differentiator. This is another example that if you don't change, you get wiped out. And there are so many examples like the Nokias of the world or the Blackberries of the world, where they did not change at the right time, and then the market was completely taken away from them. This is from the similar slide, that embrace changes wherever possible, because it really helps. Another thing is, a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we say that I have an idea, shall I share this idea, or I'm sitting a lot of ideas. Ideas generally don't carry any value as long as you don't execute them. So get more into execution rather than more into ideation. Yes, ideas are important, but the devil lies in execution. So try to execute as fast as possible. uh, and don't add too many ideas. So keep lesser number of ideas, try to execute those ideas before you add up more ideas to the table. Now, this is something which the developers and product managers can relate very well. Many times we tend to not ship the product because we feel that, okay, let me do little more modification, or let me make it right and then I will ship it. I think it's important to have a fine balance between both. It is important to ship because only when you ship the product out in the market is when you start getting user feedback. And user feedbacks are very important in early stage of the product, because that is when you actually get to know whether the product is right for the market fit. And early user feedback always helps in making the product right at the right time. So try to do some beta or some kind of a mechanism where you are able to ship the product as early as possible, but making sure that you are not cutting any corners while releasing the product. This is one of my favorite topics, as startups, as there is a mad rat race around digital marketing, content marketing. We keep seeing people doing a lot of content everywhere. I mean, everyone has become a Javed Akhtar, or everyone has become a Shakespeare these days, where everyone has some ideas. They want to write, they want to publish, and then you are not able to separate the wheat from the chaff. I mean, it's very tough that what is good content and what is bad content. So, and then most of the content being written is written to please Google rather than pleasing the customer. So whenever you are doing something, whether it is marketing or whether it is digital or content, uh, do it keeping the customer in mind, because the customer is the true north for you. And don't really chase the Google hacks or the SEOs, etc., etc. I mean, if you write well for your customer, your SEO will happen automatically. If you write it well and which is high quality and meaningful to the customer, uh, it will travel by itself. I mean, you don't need to put 10 guys for a content to travel. Yes, some kind of seeding is required, some kind of digital marketing is required, but I mean, don't overdo it. Focus more on quality, less on quantity, because today there is a huge glut of digital marketing. uh, the same content being written again and again and again by some minor changes here and there, and then it is not helping anyone. I mean, the customer doesn't need so much of content. And this is something to support my previous statement, that let's say if you are a great fan of Jagjit Singh, or if you are a great fan of Michael Jackson, now uh, one ghazal from Jagjit Singh or one performance from Michael Jackson cannot be replaced by 100 mediocre performances. So I hope you got what I'm trying to say, that a quality cannot be replaced by a lot of quantity. So if you are able to produce something quality, you don't really need to do a lot of quantity. The next few slides are on design. Why design? Because design is an area where the concepts of less is more are very, very applicable. We as designers and product guys, we tend to add too many bells and whistles in the product. We try to solve the problems by adding a lot of things, but without realizing that adding too many things doesn't help the consumer. So design is intelligence made visible, and and the simplest things are hardest to solve. So uh, you might feel that this is very simple, but then how do you really design it very simple? That is where the art lies. So I'll give you some quick examples. uh, for example, this is a visiting card. Now, you would have seen a lot of visiting cards where you will have some 100 words on the same small visiting cards. Now, and the person who receives that visiting card is not able to even focus on something. So keep it simple. Keep bare minimum what is required. for the user to understand. Uh, get into details of design. So, for example, in this particular slide, uh, I'm not able to understand whether 36 is my length or 36 is my waist. So, every small detail counts in design. So focus is very important in a design. These are some deliberate design flaws. For example, despite the pharmaceutical industry being so very advanced, they have still not solved the simple problem of expiry. Everyone struggles with the expiry date on pharmaceutical, on your pills, on your medicine. So these are some of the deliberate design flaws which industry should solve because it doesn't help anyone. Design should be more usable. Yes, creativity is important, but creativity at the cost of usability is very bad. So this is an example of toilets which have these creative signboards. And now, see, looking at this design, it is tough whether which is men's toilet and which is the women toilet. So keep it simple, because that is what helps. Now, simple things have very heavy recall, they have very high adoption, and they are ageless. So, whether you talk about songs, whether you talk about movies, whether you talk about games, now everyone would recall the game on the top, but nobody will recall the game on the second on the bottom. So, I hope you understood that how human brain recalls simple things. So hence, why do you make it complex? So keep it simple, keep less, rather than adding too much. This is another example where a product and design guy kind of struggles with this almost every day. How do you balance between flexibility and convenience? Because if you make it flexible, then you increase the cognitive load, and con- if you make it convenient, then you reduce the flexibility. So keep a fine balance between flexibility and convenience, because they both move opposite to each other. If you make it too flexible, it is very hard to use, and I'll show you some examples. um, for example, this remote, everyone uses a TV remote, and even today the remotes are like this. Now, this remote is so very complex, and most of the times that is the reason why a lot of people don't use remotes. A lot of kids and a lot of old people hesitate to use remotes because they are so very complex to use. There are too many things which are not required in this remote, and they can be removed. This is another example. So if you are doing a web design, don't give too many choices, because the user is confused with too many choices. Yes, the user will ask you too many choices because that is how human behaves, but they don't use it. So try to reduce the choice for the consumer. And there is a famous UX law around this, which is known as the Hicks law, that the cognitive load increases as you increase the number of choices. So keep the choices as less as possible. This is another example. One of the best companies in the previous decade, Yahoo, but it did not stand for anything. I mean, it was all over the place. It was doing 100 things, and the customer was confused. So it would have been a great story if Yahoo had focused on maybe one or two and did it so very well, which is what the did in the initial days, where they just focused on search, and they made it so very well that everyone recalls Google by search even today. These are like the preference screens which we find in a lot of softwares, whether you go to an SAP or you go to a Salesforce or you go to so many products, so many preference screens that it becomes unusable. So try to reduce the preference screens. Not only softwares, but if you go to, let's say, household products like a oven or a microwave, I mean, a lot of people are afraid of using these products because they are so very complex. There are so many choices. Now, this is very interesting slide which talks about how you can win a competition by underdoing the competition rather than overdoing the competition. So we are generally obsessed with competition. Whenever a competition releases a feature, we try to release more than one. So rather than aping the competition and releasing more and more features, try that why don't you reduce, why don't you do lesser than the competition? Because many times you, that you win because you have lesser features. And there are so many examples like WhatsApp just wiped out this entire communication market because it was so very simple, and it cut down a lot of features which were available uh, from others, from the previous players. uh, Going back with the previous slide, that obsess with your customer, not your competition, because many times your competition is also not clear what the customer wants. Another one which the product managers, if there are any in this conversation, would understand it very well, that many times you have to take a stand while building a product. So the customer might ask you a lot of things, but many times the customers don't understand what they want. So generally try to understand why a customer wants something rather than asking the customer what you want. Because if you understand the why, you will be able to build the what. But if you start building the what without understanding the why, you will, most of the times you will solution it wrongly, and you will lose the edge against your competition. So yeah, so try to stay in the problem box as much as possible. And then once you understand the problem very well, then try to solution it. Don't jump to the solution in the early stages, because when you jump to the solution too early, your solution won't be optimal. And this is how your typical product life cycle should work. So you should start with why, that why do you need this feature, or why do you need this. Then you should arrive at the what, that okay, this is how, this is what I will try to build. And then you should go to the how, that how should I build this. And then you should talk about that when will I deliver it. Many times we suffer that we try to answer the when first. When you go to a client meeting, and then the client asks you something, you typically might say that okay, I will provide you this by next month. But you did not even think about the what and how. And this is typically a problem in sales teams, where they commit on the when without understanding the why, what, and how. So it's very important that you go through this cycle in a proper way. You can't satisfy everyone while building any product. So stay away from customers who may not be right for you, though every customer is good, and you should try to do best. But sometimes it's okay to say a no to a customer, because if you think that that is not your long term, and that feature is not what you want to build, then stay away. Because every feature you adopt is like adopting a child, and you have to nurture that child, you have to grow that child. So every feature has to be grown, nurtured, everything. So be very careful while you are adopting any feature. Keep your code as simple as possible, because the complexity of the code increases exponentially, like E is equal to MC square. In early days of your code, it is easy because the number of lines are very less. But once you grow up in your organization, the code becomes so very complex that the scalability suffers. So keep the code very, very simple. Try to do some best practices, adopt some best practices in the while writing code. Now this is a very important area, that many times when we design products, we try to think a lot about the features which we want to build tomorrow, and we kind of overlook the problems of today. So while solving or while building any product, try to solve the problems of today first, and then think about tomorrow. Yes, it is important to foresee the future and build for the future, but your customer is living for and working with you for today. So don't let the customer suffer because you are busy building something for tomorrow at the cost of today. And yes, this is my last slide. And if you understand my intention behind this slide, so this entire line is written on a notepad, if you notice. And everyone uses or has used notepad some or the other day in our lives. But the best part of Microsoft Notepad is that this software has remained the same for the last 20 to 30 years. I mean, I have been using it for the last 20 years and I haven't seen any change. So what I'm trying to say is that as we grow old, or as we add more number of years in our journey of product, doesn't mean that you have to complicate the product. Rather than complicating or adding more features to the product, try to think that how can you simplify it, how can you make it more easy, how can you make it more usable. And that is when you will see that your product has an endless life cycle. I mean, there are so many notepads like the Eclipse and the editors which have come, but there are still millions of users who still love to work on a notepad. So yeah, with this I will I finish my presentation, and I can now take any kind of questions.
Right. Hey, Manoj. So, Manoj, we have one question. Ashwini. Ashwini, can you join in with the raise hand, and we can take you over here on the platform. I mean, my
Or if there is any question on the chat, you
yes.
can.
So there is one. So this it's from Ashwani Jain. So Ashwani Jain wants to ask that how does one keep distractions at bay and maintain focus?
Yeah, so see, it depends upon person to person, because everyone might have different kinds of distraction. But there are some common sets of distraction which every individual faces in today's life. So if we have to kind of make some groups of these kind of distractions, so the biggest distraction I think everyone would agree is the digital life everyone has. So everyone is living a digital life, and that keeps you distracted. It can be your Facebook, it can be your WhatsApp, it can be your emails, etc., etc.
Right.
Uh,
We are getting a request from Lalit. Right.
Hey Manoj, hey Gaurav. Manoj, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I have a question. So you said that there should be not too many goals, and you should basically distill it down to one goal. So do you have like a framework to basically narrow your set of goals to one goal? Because as entrepreneurs, there is I think almost everything looks like a priority. It's like a yardstick. Can I ask a simple question and get an answer so that I can distill my set of goals to single goal?
Yeah. So, how do you define your goals also depends upon what is your role in the company. So, I know that as founders, you might have different goals, but while you are passing these goals to your teams, then filter it down. So you might be sitting on 10 goals, and being a founder, you know which is a better priority, and which is more strategic for you, which may not be equally understood by your teammates. So one is that when you are taking your goals to your teammates, then keep it as less as possible. Try to keep it maybe one or two. That is one. And at the senior level, let's say a VP, SVP, and founder kind of level, or a CXO level, uh, as founders, we keep getting a lot of ideas from everywhere. Everyone will give us something that, okay, why don't you do this? This is a fantastic idea. We keep getting news articles, we keep getting some or the other update. Maybe you can keep noting down all of them, but just stay focused and dedicated with one or two, and try to kind of get some results from those one or two faster, so that then you can move to the next. Because if you are doing too many goals at the same time, I don't think you will be able to kind of do justice to any one of them. I mean, every goal will be mediocre. So rather than doing too many goals, just do one or two, do them well, either fail them, or maybe kind of succeed in them, but at least get a yes or no out of that goal and then move to the next rather than opening too many goals at the same time.
Thanks. This is Chacha. Actually, I saw your presentation where you saying that the current time the people are using the same content and changing little bit here and there and publishing into the public. So, as a e-commerce platform owner, how do you give us an idea to do the digital marketing and focus on that? If you can give us.
Yeah, sure. So what happens in this digital marketing is that there is too much of digital marketing happening today. I mean, everyone is doing webinars, everyone is doing some content, everyone is doing some Facebook, Twitter, etc., etc. And we are both producers as well as consumers ourselves. And you would have noticed that how dedicatedly do you read yourself when you come across any topic. Your attention span is very less. So it is very important that, I mean, at least the producers can start focusing on only publishing quality. And if everyone starts doing that, then the readers who are reading your content will have less to read, and they will be focused to they will be able to focus on what really is a quality. Otherwise, today what is happening is uh, you tend to miss out the good quality content because there is some hacky way of getting some other content up the Google or in your ranking, and you miss out the real good content. So, and then what I have also seen is that if you write a good piece of content, it really travels very well. It gets viral by itself. You don't have to really do a lot of hacks when the content is good, and we have so many examples around that. I mean, be it an artist. So if there is a good movie, it travels by itself. If it is a good song, it travels by itself. If it is a good webinar, it travels by itself. Yes, there is some initial intervention is required to kind of build some initial awareness, but after that it travels. So I think that if you are generating maybe 20 articles in 1 month, try to generate just 2 articles. But those 2 articles are so amazing that everyone just wants to read that article, and then you will see the difference because your company will start getting associated that yes, these guys only write sense, and hence I should read these articles, and they will wait for those articles. I can see another question on my screen, which from Shubhraj from Acom. Uh, he's asking that how do you decide whether a new feature is required or not? Now, there are a lot of frameworks to decide that. There are very proven frameworks you can read out in any product management book. There is a popular framework by the name RISE, and then there are many others. But all the frameworks basically talk about few things that uh, one, it has to be from the user voice. That if, let's say, a statistical sample of 20 to 30 users is asking that feature, then you should definitely think and see that okay, yes, it makes sense or not. Because if a large number of people are asking that, then it might make a lot of sense. But if one or two guys are asking out of a sample set of 100 or 200, then you might need to wait for more voice to come in, because then it might not be a problem statement for everyone. uh, the other areas to kind of check before you prioritize is also around what is the cost of building that feature. uh, do you have the right capability to do that feature? For example, there might be a very important feature required, but it might require heavy investment in which you can't afford. So you can do a weighted average of customer voice, the cost required, the time required, and then choose the feature set which you should take in terms of priority. I think there is a raise of hand, Gaurav.
Hey Manoj, Lalit again. So,
Yeah.
so on Twitter there is a celebrity, entrepreneur by the name Naval Ravikant, and
Okay.
he has shared a thought that to avoid competition or to escape competition, you have to be authentic.
Yes.
Now that's something which is very hard to wrap head around. Could you share your thoughts around how can one be authentic, or how can discover the authentic nature of their business? And maybe taking an example of like a run of the mill e-commerce, company. Like how can that company discover their authentic nature and then stick to that?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, a fantastic question, Lalit. Now, there are a lot of angles to it. One is definitely that many times entrepreneurs are in the survival mode. And when you are in the survival mode, you don't have too much to kind of wait and innovate. So sometimes you know that you want to do this, but you are still not able to do because you have to somehow survive. But let's say that if you are able to handle your survival, then you can easily differentiate yourself by having a very deep understanding of your customer. Because many times when we start building products, we don't really understand our customer so well. We pretend that we understand, but we really don't. uh, so for example, many times we start the product building exercise by our own our own prejudice. Second is we try to just see some 5 to 6 competition and then say that okay, the competition is doing this, and then maybe I will also do something similar but with a better UI or maybe a better UX. uh, that is an okay approach, but I mean that doesn't solve the customer problem so very well. So to really solve something innovative, you have to go out, meet some hundreds of customers, and that knowledge is amazing. I mean that is a treasure which is just awaiting. And there are so many examples who have done it. I can give you an example of Flipkart. I was part of the Flipkart team in very early days, and this is during 2011-12, that Flipkart was trying to find that what are the real problems in Indian e-commerce, why it is not picking up. There were so many players before Flipkart as well. There was India Plaza, there was some knowledge about Amazon from the US, there were Fonts and Petals, etc., etc. There was Rediff Shopping. But Flipkart did an amazing job that time by talking to thousands of users, and I was one of them who interviewed more than 200 to 300 users by going to doorsteps of each of the users. And we found that there are only 3 or 4 problems which are very important to solve in Indian context to get the adoption of e-commerce. And those inputs were very different from the Western world. So had Flipkart copied that Western world of Amazon in the initial days, I don't think Flipkart would have been Flipkart today. So the insights which we got during those user interviews was, one, that I can't do transactions on credit cards. I don't believe in that, or I don't have one. So that is when the Flipkart was one of the very early companies to bring cash on delivery. The second one was the around trust, that I don't believe online. I'm not used to ordering online, and that is when Flipkart did a lot of things to build trust, both online, through their marketing, through everything they did. And those things really clicked well, and that is when the real hockey stick growth of Flipkart started somewhere around 2012, because they cracked the real Indian problem. So yeah, to answer, I mean, just know the customers very well and solve for them.
Thank you, Manoj. But then there is a follow-up question. So, if the truth about any industry lies with the customers, right, and all what is required by required of entrepreneurs to do is to go and talk to users and understand, then isn't that natural that people will end up building same set of features, people will end up discovering same sort of insights? Where is the question of finding
Yeah,
authenticity?
yeah. So one is the population is huge, and there are a lot of customer cohorts. So, for example, the Dabba Walas is a perfect use case for Bombay. But Dabbawalas may not be a great use case for Bangalore because Bangalore maybe 5 years back. Today, Bangalore is still tough to travel. But Bangalore earlier days was so very easy to travel that you can have good food in office. Whereas this problem was very, very peculiar for Bombay. So the customer cohorts are very important to understand. What fits there may not fit here. What fits in Punjab may not fit in Karnataka. What fits in Spain may not fit in US. And that is what we as entrepreneurs need to focus. That how do you identify your cohorts and solve for them. So, for example, air meat problem statement for India might be very very different for from an air meat problem statement in the valley. And that is how you can kind of uh, build the product depending upon your market.
Thanks, Manoj.
I can see one more question from a student, Chandan. He says, I'm a 18-year-old student and I want to start something of mine, but I'm not getting things where to start. Yeah, so he's basically asking about how do I start? Can somebody mentor me? Yes. So Chandan, yes, you are very welcome. All of us here who are attending this webinar would be glad to help you. I myself can help you. And you are just 18 years, so there is a long way for you to kind of learn by yourself. Once you start doing things by yourself, every day would be a learning day for you, and I'm sure that in the next 3 to 4 years you will learn a lot. So there is no secret sauce to learn entrepreneurship. You just have to do it yourself. Maybe attend some sessions like these, talk to people who have done it, read some good books, and the most important, execute. I mean, do something yourself to learn it. So from my practical experience, and so we have implemented a lot of these things in our own office as well, and we have seen very measurable output by doing these things. So we can really quantify a lot of things which we have adopted in our company from the slides I showed you, and we have seen a lot of good things when we started doing these things. So maybe some of you can try adopting some of these things, and if you do it with commitment, I'm sure that you will achieve some good things, because what I have written in these slides is nothing rocket science. This is very plain vanilla obvious things, but while doing our day-to-day life we tend to forget uh, some of these important nuggets of life. And we in that rat race we kind of don't take a pause, and then if you take a pause, think, and then restart, maybe you will do it better. Some So there is another question: how do you come out of committing insane ops due to managers' attitude in IT services? So I think it is important whenever a manager is giving any work to his junior or his reportee, it is important that the onus lies on both the sides. If a reportee is getting something and which he cannot chew, or if a reportee is getting something which is not clear about, it is perfectly fine to ask your manager. So if you are not clear what your manager is asking, ask him. If you are still not clear, ask him again. If you are still not clear, ask him again. And don't leave till you are very clear. Because it not only would help you, it would also help him. Because many times when you are giving a job to somebody else, or when you are giving a task to somebody else, you yourself have not really thought through it and you have just given it. And after 1 or 2 days of work, you realize that, or you wasted the time of that guy, which which you could have saved by maybe giving little more thought to it. So a healthy conversation between a manager and the reportee is very very important. It always helps. Managers should not get offended by these things, and the reportee should not be afraid of these things. I can recommend a very fantastic book to everyone here. There is a book by Kim Scott, which was one of the early Join is with Google. She wrote a book, Radical Candor, which which talks a lot about manager reportee communication, and and then you can really learn a lot of things, that how effective communication between a manager and reportee can not only solve the problem between the two, but it can solve very large problems for the company as well. Because if every manager start doing that, then you will have a very fantastic org, where you don't really have to depend upon the HR, because HR is just a facilitator. It is the managers who really shape up the company, not the HR.
Hey, hi, hi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I guess that was really a fantastic session. I guess many of the questions that were asked, that were very relevant, and that's something. So one thing that I take it from here, that is the main thing is execution. Irrespective of what you think, what you do, just get out, try it out, work it out, right?
Yeah, yeah. Execute, and execute with quality rather than quantity.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. So there are some requests of actually you sharing the PPT with the attendees today. I guess that there's a lot that could be taken from today's session, and especially from those PPTs. So if it's possible, I mean, would
Sure, I'll do that. And a lot of these posts are also shared on my LinkedIn. So some of you are already connected on my LinkedIn, but if you can also connect, and then you will see some of. I keep posting these things, and maybe if you are interested in learning, you can always connect.
all right, all right. Thank you, Manoj. Thank you so much.
Thank
Uh,
you.
right, it was wonderful hosting you, and look forward to actually have you here again sometime. Right. Uh,
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a
Thanks
lot, Manoj.
everyone. Thanks for taking out time.
Thank you. Thank you for taking it.